Good morning, everybody. I'm Victoria Schaefer, HFTP Senior Membership Manager, along with Barbara Cimarero, HFTP Chapter Relations Coordinator. HFTP is sponsoring the first HC3 Hackathon, and we look forward to all the sessions this week. So HFTP, we are the Hospitality, Financial, and Technology Professionals. We were established in 1952 and are an educational association for hospitality and financial technology professionals. We're an international nonprofit association headquartered in Austin, Texas, with offices in Hong Kong, the UK, the Netherlands, and Dubai. HFTP is recognized as the spokesgroup for finance and technology segments of the hospitality industry, with members and stakeholders spanning across the globe. We uniquely understand the industry's pressing issues and assist in stakeholders in finding solutions to the challenges more efficiently than any other organization. We do this through our networks, certification programs, research, information resources, and conferences and events. HFTP also owns its own hospitality-specific search engine, pineapplesearch.com. Our members are hospitality, financial, and technology professionals, allied members who provide goods and services to the hospitality industry, young professionals who are beginning their careers in hospitality, and students who are studying to become hospitality professionals. Student membership in HFTP is free, and I encourage you to contact me for specific pricing on professional and young professional membership promotions. We offer 2 certifications and a certificate program. The certifications elevate your professionalism and demonstrate superior industry performance. HFTP certificate programs are globally recognized for setting industry standards for hospitality, finance, and technology. Qualifications for the exams is based on a level of education and experience in the industry. Student programs are also available. Take charge of your career with HFTP certifications. We offer the CHAE, which is a Certified Hospitality Accountant Executive, and a CHTP, which is a Certified Hospitality Technology Professional. HFTP is also the owners of the USALI, which is the Uniform System of Accounts for the lodging industry. First published in 1926, the primary purpose of the USALI is to offer operating statements formatted to provide hotel owners, managers, and other interested parties with operational information pertinent to the lodging industry. The HFTP is now offering 2 certificate courses that demonstrate your expertise on the USALI. The objective for participants to understand the history, use, and content of the USALI, and courses available to all with no previous experience required. Please contact me because we have a special going on right now where you can take the USALI certificate at a discounted rate. Before I begin, I'd like to go over a few items about the session today. First, this is a conversation and your input is important. We're going to start with Art Lewry giving a presentation on digital presentations. At the end, during the question and answer session, you may unmute your microphone, which is now muted, to share a comment or question. Today's session is being recorded. These are educational discussions offered in a non-sales environment. Product promotion or sales pitches through the chat feature are not allowed. We will post the antitrust statement in the chat. The floor over to Eileen, our student leader for today's session.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Before we begin with this webinar, I just wanted to give some reminders for the Hackathon finalists who are here today. Just a reminder, your hacks are due this Thursday by 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time. These are video submissions, and these are through the same OneDrive links as the first round. So undergraduate and graduate separated. And these are 3 minutes long this time. And all the times are on the Teams, Microsoft Teams channel. So you can just go over there and check out whichever part of the world you're in. We've translated all the time so that there are no mix-ups. So for today's webinar, it is about digital presentations. And I will now introduce our speaker for today, Art Lewry. Art is a multidisciplined creative director, producer, designer, film director, writer, strategist, innovator, business builder, and communicator. Wow. Wow is all I can say. In a career spanning 36 years, Art has worked on a wide range of products encompassing conferences and events, museums, exhibitions and interiors, brand and print design, digital, film and video, marketing, and integrated communication campaigns. He has worked extensively in the United Kingdom, United States, Europe, Australia, Singapore, and Taiwan, and has created communication solutions that have been used all over the world. In the hospitality sector, Art has worked with Bridge Street, Rockwell 40 Hotels, Wyndham Hotels, Intercontinental Hotels Group, and International Hospitality Media. Art is founder and CEO of the Hunter Gatherer LTD Creative Agency. Hi, Art. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for that, Eileen. Thanks for that. I mean, yeah, thanks for that lovely introduction. I mean, really, I'm a jack of all trades by the sound of it, you know, so I think you can sum that up as I'm just a storyteller, you know, in all sorts of ways. So thanks again for inviting me to be along. This is going to be a very broad ranging presentation. You know, it's just really sort of, you know, expose you to all sorts of things. There will be a few little technical pieces in there that might be of use, but let's see how it goes.
Awesome.
What I'm going to do first of all is rewind. And, you know, a lot of what I've done, you know, for over 3 decades, it's quite scary, live events, you know, just really bringing people together in a room. Now, how weird does that look to us now? You know, it was something we were so used to. But goodness me, you know, that seems like another world. And in some ways, it very much is. And one of the events I did, I think for 11 years, was the Institute of Directors annual convention at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And that would be, you know, up to 3,000 people. There would be all sorts of business leaders and political leaders speaking. They would have panels. Fantastic. I mean, just fantastic subjects. And I'd work very closely with these speakers. You know, I'd be working on screen content and the staging and, you know, all sorts of things. So it's just absolutely fascinating to get to know some of these people. And some of these people you will recognize, no doubt, you know, people very much, you know, leaders in hospitality and other random people that would come on. You know, I don't know who he is. I don't know how he's done since 2013. But what's interesting is if we just go back 4 years to the Institute of Directors annual convention, you know, and this was very much a time of change. You know, there had been the election in the US, there had been the Brexit referendum. And one of the speakers that I've worked with a lot, which is Kevin Roberts, who is CEO of Saatchi & Saatchi, the advertising agency. Fantastic speaker, talks about change, talks about love marks, really well worth checking out. But one of the things he was talking about was living in a VUCA world. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this term. But it was actually a term that came out of the States, I think, in the 80s, and it was adopted by the US military. And really what it means is it's a world that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So we've been talking about this VUCA world for quite a few years now. And we look at that now and go, you know, if we were talking about this 4 years ago, you know, we had no idea about the sort of world we would be living in, you know, like now. You know, we are absolutely living in a VUCA world where nothing is certain. You have to, you know, react fast to things. It's very complex. It's very ambiguous. There's no black and white. It's very interesting. So Kevin talks a lot about this and how you work and how you communicate within a VUCA world. And if we look at working in a VUCA world, you know, in the past, you know, the old world, you know, you used hard power and it was command, pressure, linear, you know, thinking very linear, kill the competition, dictate, you know, it's all about me. In a VUCA world, you've got to change that and start to use soft power, which is inspiring. You know, it's about culture, it's being more holistic, about being creative and making things. It's about listening. And it's about tough love, which I think comes down to mentoring in many ways. So it's interesting, I brought up his presentation. This is from 4 years ago. I'm thinking, this is very interesting. So he was saying this is a world we're moving from command and control to collaborate, connect, and create. You think, that's interesting. Because if I look at Hackathon this year, that's exactly what you've been doing. You have to look at all of those entries and all those contributions from everyone. That's all been about collaboration, connecting, and creating. And I think being creative as well fits into that. So it really sort of hits the nail on the head that all those things that we were talking about in the VUCA world you had to be, you're doing. So we're starting to see the leaders in hospitality merging out of all of this, and this is the approach they're going to have. So I found that very, very interesting. And what that I think is all about, it's about great communication. And I think whatever you do, whether or not you're a general manager or you're looking after housekeeping or you're running brands, now more than ever, you have to be a great communicator. I mean, an exceptional communicator. Again, what does great communication mean? Right now, it means forget the old ways of doing things. There are no right or wrong ways, but certainly be creative, experiment, take risks, be agile, move fast, and take control. And we'll talk about some of that in a moment. Another point, and Sean and I have been talking a lot about this, is the age of the specialist is well and truly over. So it's not, I need someone else to do that. I think as a communicator, you've got to be able to do more than write well and speak well. You've got to be able, I think, really embrace and master what are amazing digital tools that are at your disposal to design, shoot, record, edit, get your message across to any audience. If I look back to when I started in this industry, the primary way of communication, this will blow your mind, was this. So that's a slide projector with slides. That was the primary way you would talk to people. Yes, we were doing video. I was, physically cutting film up, but you would have events, you get lots of people in the room, and you would use slide projectors, multiple slide projectors, 24 of them, all doing, making up these huge images. It's beautiful, but just a complete pain in the ass to put together. The processes you'd have to go through to make one slide, were just astonishing. Now, with your phone, with anything, it's a doddle. So you can really concentrate on being a great communicator and getting fantastic messages. And right now, being a great communicator, that's all on screen. You're not going to be getting into rooms with people talking to them. If you're lucky, you will, but you're going to have these barriers. So really, you've got to embrace the screen. And I think you are already. I think you're doing, the submissions for HC3 have already proved that. I think you've got to do everything you can do to sort of really elevate your expertise in this. And as I said, as good as a communicator you are face to face, you now have to excel once you get on screen. So what we're going to flash through really are, issues such as telling your story, how you might visualize your messages, and I'll touch on data visualization, which sounds incredibly technical, but it's not. Visualizing the intangible, that's a bit of fun, and then shooting video and editing video. I'm not going to get too bogged down in PowerPoint or any of that. You all know that, but I think a lot of these approaches we'll be talking about apply to things like PowerPoint as well. But again, with PowerPoint, you're not going to be in a room giving a presentation. You've got to be thinking on screen in a virtual sense. So if we look at telling your story, I could have added another 50 lines to this, but these are the things you should be thinking about. You know, first of all, what is your story? And why does this matter to your audience? I think that's something you really have to nail. Because if it doesn't matter to them, if it's not relevant to them, you know, they're not going to be interested. So you have to make it relevant. You have to make it engaging and memorable. You know, what can you do to do that? I think the other word is, it does get overworked, but authentic. You know, it can't be fake or, you know, covered in glitter. It's got to be real. You've got to be very, very real now. So keep your ideas simple, limit your ideas and craft them well. So don't try and, whatever you do, don't try and cram in too many special effects and shooting stars or whatever it is. Keep it simple. Use emotion. You know, aim for the heart as well as the head. That always works. And I'll touch on some of that in a moment. Avoid gimmicks and fluff, as I sort of said. And remember, and you know, everything you're doing, it's not about you. You know, it's about the story and it's about your audience. Every process you go through, you've got to be putting yourself in the shoes of the audience. Again, why does this matter to me? And what do you want me to do? What's your call to action? Another big issue is timing and duration. And this is something, you know, we might talk about a little bit later on. But, you know, often people sort of ask, you know, how long should a video be? And it's, well, it all depends. It depends where your audience is. You know, if they're online with their mobile, it might be 15 seconds. You know, if you've got them in a room, it might be 7 minutes. You know, if they're comfortable at home, you might be able to run a film for an hour. It all depends on where they are and their state of mind. And while we're talking about that, it's actually worth bringing up some, I won't labor through this too much, but really the optimum durations, when you're going onto social media, very, very interesting that, you know, more than 50% of videos published online are less than 2 minutes long. But long form content still works. You know, look at Vice and you've got long form documentaries. People sit and watch them. People sit and watch, they binge watch box sets of hours and hours of a series. So it all depends, you know, and it depends, you know, but it's very important to sort of, on this short stuff, you know, the Facebook, the YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, to quickly get your messages out. And, you know, it's a few things, you know, it's a great line, save your best for first, you know, make every second count, make it legible. You know, is this going to work on a mobile with no sound? All those things you need to think about. You know, is that going to cut through? So, yeah, I thought it was worth touching on that because it's sort of, it is a big issue and it's something we're always thinking about. So let's go back to your story, and it's really sort of, how do you map the story? How do you start to construct your story? And again, that comes down to sort of, well, what is your story? What is your big idea? You know, and if you can't quite make that big idea into one sentence, then you've really got to work on that. You know, if you can get that, the one line that says, this is what we're talking about, or this is my offer, you have to do that in one sentence. And then think about, you know, it's really thinking about the journey you're taking the audience on, you know, and getting the balance right. You know, don't waste all the time on the intro. You know, again, if we go back to the social, you know, people are turning off after 10 seconds. You know, some people say if you don't nail it in the first 3 seconds, you've lost them. You know, so again, you've got to get the stuff that's really relevant to your audience in nice and early. And then you write the script, and we'll talk about how we might write scripts and construct things in a moment. Storyboarding, determining what you need to shoot or what imagery you need to find or create, and be creative. And I think all that will sort of make a lot more sense once we start getting into this in a moment. So if we look at an online video or a video that's delivered somehow online, you know, whether or not that's live or it's, you know, as a recorded piece, how do you tell the story? But there's just loads of ways we can do that. You know, we can use animation and graphics and music. You can just have a narrator. You can have a piece to camera like this. I'm just talking to you directly like this. It might be a guided tour. I could take you around, and show you the studio here. It's not very big, but it's sort of, it's homely. Or you might get into interviews, and that's something I'm certainly going to go into a little bit of detail in the moment. It's probably my preferred way of communicating. That's using interviews, but there's lots of different ways we can do that. And of course, there's live webinars like this and live streams. So I'm reading off the lines here at the moment. Right. So what have you got to be? You've got to be creative. So what is creative? Creativity is not about technique. It's not about how you lay that paint on the canvas. I mean, some people will argue that it is, but I think it's not. Creativity, I think, is seeing things differently and then getting your audience to do the same. And you think of any story or, any message you're trying to get out, that's what you need to be achieving. You need them to go, I've never thought of it like that. I'm interested, I'm engaged. Because that's what artists do. You've got to think like an artist, which is not about how am I going to get this paint on the canvas. It's how am I going to think differently, see differently, and get my audience to think differently. Because, as we can see, that's what great artists do. They see things differently, and they get you to see things differently. And when you do that, when you achieve that, and this is, very much you're reaching into their heart more than their head, you can achieve great things. You can really move people, you can motivate people, you can make them angry, make them do something about something. That's what great artists do. So it's sort of training yourself to think like an artist, which is training yourself to think differently to get your audience to think differently. So we'll start off with data visualization. I think whatever you do, I think, a lot of, our working lives, we're presenting data, whether or not it's a pie chart or a graph, or it's a line going up, or it's a line going down. We're seeing a lot of that now. But what I'd like you to think about is how can you push that, go beyond the pie chart, beyond the bar graph, beyond the simple line going up. Because once you do that, you get people to think differently again. And I'm not sure if you all know this lady, Florence Nightingale, very well known in Britain. She was not even a trained nurse in the Crimean War, that Britain was fighting in. And, she's known as the lady with the lamp, and you think, oh, she's caring for the soldiers and, caring for their welfare and everything. The big thing with her is she was an incredible statistician, an incredible communicator. And she, obviously, the British government was not seeing what the issue was here. So she didn't invent the pie chart. It'll come to me who invented that, but she developed that. She created this visual here that completely summed up what the issue was in Crimea. That the soldiers, the deaths from battle are in black. So the chart on the right is actually the first year when it was worst. So the black are deaths in battle. The grey, the bluey grey, are deaths from disease. So the soldiers were dying from disease, from easily preventable disease. And this is each month. You can see, how many. You can see everything you need to know is here. And the next year, once they put some measures in place, is over across on the left, you can see that is the same scale. So you can see the improvement they had. Once they started digging trenches, cleaning the wards, making sure everything was clean, making sure everyone was fed well, that's what she put in place. But she used this to convince them to do that. So it's this whole story in here that actually completely changed people's minds, and they could see it beyond numbers, go, I can see what the issue is here. Another infographic hero of mine would be Charles Joseph Menard. And this is fantastic diagram of really Napoleon's advance on Moscow, which sounds quite interesting. So the brown there, you can see the width of that, that's how many soldiers. So the width represents the soldiers, the path represents their journey to Moscow. Down the bottom, I've cut it out of here, it shows the temperature. So that's how many are heading out. The black is their retreat, that's how many got back. So you can see there's a whole story in this one infographic that's, 200 years old. It's fantastic stuff. So it's sort of, think of that, think beyond, what you can just do with a bar chart or something. Somebody probably more familiar to you would be David McCandless. Do check out informationisbeautiful.net. Just loads of great data visualizations. Here is, like we can see brushing your teeth is 5 liters of water. To grow an apple, 70 liters of water. And there's a few there I've cut out. It was like to produce 1 bottle of water takes 6 bottles of water. It just gets the messages across. And it's things like that, visualizing data, getting away from numbers really sort of makes a difference. Here are another one of his, which is colors in culture. And here's his famous, the $1 billion graph. I can't see what it sort of says there. But, it sort of puts everything into context. And these are the sort of things you can start to use to really, really communicate to people. Getting away from the boring stuff. And talking about that, we're talking, this is all very much based on data. We can also talk about visualizing the intangible. And if there's one thing I'd like you to go off and do and, work with your friends on, and, even family members, is how do you, what's your vision of the year in your head? What shape is it? And just use this as an exercise to sort of kind of stretch your brain and talk to people about, what shape is the year in my, if I had to draw it, what is it? There's definitely people have ovals and circles and all sorts of things. But, some people, I know someone in this room has a straight line. And that has, in this last few months, changed. Somebody else I spoke to, they said, well, it's like a mole burrowing through the earth. And I go, really? I see this oval, and it's doing this, visualizing the intangible is another great tool that you can really employ. This is a mad one, but it's, we all have some kind of picture of the year in your head. Have a go, draw it and try it. And then compare notes with people. It's very, very interesting. So I just touch on creating graphics for your video. Yes, generally, if you're going to make things in Photoshop or Illustrator or Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever tool you use, they need to go 1920 by 1080 pixel size for normal video. But, draw stuff by hand, be creative. Don't get bogged down in just boring looking PowerPoint. Shooting video, right. This is an interesting one. Of course, a lot of what we do, I'm shooting with professional camera guys, doing a lot. Increasingly, especially in these times, I'm shooting myself, with a DSLR. And I know a few of you will have those. All I'd say with that is put it on manual and learn manual, because it will forget automatic, learn manual, and you will get amazing results out of it. But what I really want to focus on now is really, sorry, I'm jumping ahead there. Right, I'm not getting into technical just yet. What I want to do is go back to some of those approaches to interviews, say, that I mentioned before. This is a video. I'll just take the sound down on that a little bit. We made for Rocco 40 Hotels in London for Brown's Hotel. I'm going to take the sound down.
It's the oldest hotel in London.
So this is what I would call a script-based interview program. So we shoot a lot of what we call B-roll of the hotel. And, you know, here we interviewed the family, the 40 family. And they kind of knew what I wanted each of them to talk about, and they knew. And so we had a pretty good idea before we went into that interview about what we needed from each one to construct this script. And that, together with great B-roll, you can shoot this on an iPhone, you know, on a smartphone, no problem. I mean, this isn't, but it's sort of, what we're using are comments from the family to construct the script. So that's what I would call a script-based interview. We have sort of a pretty good idea of what we're going into when we shoot it. So just by using these interviews, you're creating this continuous narrative. The volume on that's not too high, is it? Or
It's not high.
no? So that's one example. And as you see, very simple. No special effects, just make it look gorgeous, you know, and really sort of, I want to stay there. Another one, this is another example, which is an unscripted interview. This is made for the Heritage Lottery Fund for this building. I'm going to take the sound down on there.
She shot in 1988.
So
Suffered from vandalism.
we shot B-roll and everything. This is a fantastic building that the HLF paid to have restored.
Covered in debris.
And
It was full of pigeons. It was a really depressing place.
we went along there to Liverpool and interviewed a whole load of people and didn't know what they were going to be saying. Excuse me. But from that, I could pull lots of comments and construct them into one story. There we go. So that was the before, this is the after. And we see little fleeting moments of each of these people we interview.
In 1889 by Bennett Hall. He was the founder and funder. It was in memoriam to his daughter Florence, who died at the untimely age of 22, and to help alleviate the problems in the area.
I'm just going to zip forward through some of these. You know, so you really don't know what you're getting into when you're starting to shoot
A lot
these
of people
things.
say the flurry saved their life.
When I came in and seen the renovation, I just couldn't believe the things that were going on. And I looked around and tears were coming down my eyes. That's how much it meant.
It provides them with a lot more confidence. They can see that something.
Instead, in a safe environment, doing something constructive once again, which tallies with what the founder wanted for the florry. I had a little girl in one of my workshops a few weeks ago. She was only 7. She said to him, "I love the florry, it's a great place to be." And she said, everybody wants to come to the florry, nobody wants to leave when they go home.
It's important to give the community something.
So very, very emotive, very, very reaching into the heart. And as I said, you know, we had no idea who we were going to be talking to once we got there. And, you know, on those, you know, with these interviews, it's very, the one thing I do is I always prompt people by saying, if I ask you what your favorite color is, don't just say blue. Say, my favorite color is blue. So all of their responses put the question into context. So you don't need to hear any questions. You know, and that's really how you, and I think it is a really powerful way of, you know, creating a video. You know, again, it's not about you, it's about them. It's about the people that benefited from it. So think about that. Now this one, and you'll recognize someone here. This is what I would call a guided tour. Let's get him up. So this was shot a few years ago now.
Hi everybody, I'm driving around London in this fabulous Mini. Mini's name is Rosie. And if you haven't done this, you haven't lived. This is a blast. We're gonna do a good old swift left-hand turn. We're giving the old Rosie here a little burst of speed. we've just opened our first studio. It's bright, it's vibrant, it's local, and you actually get to spend time with your friends on social media and start talking about what it's like to drive around London in Mini. You got a shower there that you're going to be absolutely blown away. It's a 5-star shower at a 2-star price with no compromises. And by the way, is no more than 2 minutes from Paddington Station.
I'm going to stop him there. So really what we're talking about a new property. We haven't seen the property yet, but what we've done is set up a feeling. You know, it's very much about lifestyle. It's about, you know, and it's engagement. I'm now engaged. I mean, it's sort of, you know, we've got an engaging person, you know, classic, put something fantastic in front of the camera. Always works. You know, if you just find something fantastic, whether it's a fantastic person or a fantastic prop, that works every time. Let's let him get to the property. Here we go.
This is the surprise that you always want when you're living like a local, you're experiencing the local environment. You know, if you like craft beer, you'll probably love Studio Paddington. So come on inside. It's going to be a real surprise. The fun part about Studio is the surprise. The surprise of bright.
You got the idea, but it's sort of, you know, it's that sort of personal guided tour. And in all my, I think it's sort of, if I have the question after the end of this, if I have one regret in life,
you do not want to get out
in my video production career, it would be, I wish I'd turned the tap on while he was in there, because it would have been a great shot. So that would have been that would have done well on YouTube. But there you go. I mean, it's a simple, really easy thing to do. You know, it's a guided tour. Just get someone that sort of engages on screen, you know, and you got it. So what I'm going to do is get straight into shooting on a smartphone, because I think that's something we'll want to know about. And it's a tremendous, you know, whether it's an iPhone or Android, these things are gobsmacking. You know, they're amazing. And you could just do fantastic things in there. And it's sort of, you know, I could give you all sorts of advice, but really, you know, generally, you know, shoot landscape. You know, sometimes you might want to be shooting something portrait. I mean, rarely. You know, if you want to be shooting stuff that you can use more than once, shoot landscape. Get a grip or a tripod. This one turns into a tripod. This is really cheap, you know. Do anything with this, but that really frees you up to do really, really good things with it. Remember, the quality of the video from there is much, much better than the quality of the video from here. So shooting, you know, doing selfies is great. If you want high quality, you need to be shooting that way. The big issue for, you know, when you're shooting someone, if they're talking to camera or you're doing a selfie, is know where the camera is. You know, it's again, we're talking about eye contact is absolutely key in any video. You know, if you're talking off of camera, you've just lost that engagement. So it is, and sometimes I stick little white bits of acrylic just so my eye is drawn to where the camera is. You know, on the front and on the back, you have to be careful on the front. But that's the thing, you have to be looking at the camera if indeed you're trying to engage with the audience like that. And again, I mean, in the same vein, don't try and read your script to the side of the camera, because we will always notice. So learn your lines, you know, and sort of shoot in short sort of little bursts that you can remember, but that's how you get that authenticity. It's like, I know what I'm talking about. Straight down. If I'm having to look down at the script, I don't know what I'm talking about. I haven't learned my lines. I don't know what, you know. So absolutely do that. Generally, if you're shooting someone or yourself, keep the camera at eye level. I mean, always on my interviews, I always shoot absolutely at eye level, never looking down on people or up on people. And as you saw with the Rocco 40 thing, just shoot lots of B-roll. You know, don't just rely on the people, because you're going to need to edit. You're going to need to then have material to edit over those edits, you know, and sort of just cover you know, a lot of the interview as well. Another classic one is clean the lens. Just 2 seconds, give it a rub, because it doesn't matter how clean it is, you get a little bit of a film on there, the light captures it, and you get that foggy sort of look. So just always keep the lens clean. And watch the lighting. Now, again, Sean's helped me out here, because I had some little bits of footage from Sean. Don't shoot with the subject looking into the sun, because that's what happens to you. If you can, shoot in the shade. You know, in some ways, just avoid direct sun, because it's always an issue. You get strong shadows, or you get, you know, you're screwing up your eyes. Shoot in the shade, it looks fantastic. You know, Sean's completely in the shade there, but how good does that look? How professional? And that's just shot with a smartphone. So it's just simple things like that. Yeah, you can see what the direct light does to Sean there. And this is a very interesting sort of approach to shooting. When framing a shot, if you're shooting something, look into the camera, not through the camera. And what I mean by that is don't get distracted by what you're shooting, you know, by the person. Look at the picture. And that's what photographers and cinematographers have done all the time. You know, you look at, don't start watching the person and get distracted by that, but look at the entire picture, and the quality of your shots will just go increase tenfold if you do that. It's a very weird one. It's a weird one to get your head around, but you know, it works every time. You know, sometimes I do it. I'm looking, oh, I have to go, oh no, I've got to look at the picture, you know, not through the camera. Don't rely on this. It's, you know, for like $10 or whatever, you can get one of these. It makes all the difference. And, you know, if it's a gimbal, and these are not expensive now, even better. You know, that really smooths it out, and, you know, it does really well. And you can, you know, you might even go for little toys like this, and this clips onto the phone as well, or it works by itself. You know, it's a great little, that's a whole 4K gimbal camera there. And that will follow my face around. You know, I can move that around and it will just track me. And these things are, I don't know who this is made by now. They make drones. I can't remember what it is now, but fantastic stuff. But, you know, you can do all of that on one of these with a gimbal. I think one of the most important things is something we learned really early on was, yes, the video software on the phone is okay. But if you want really good results, use an app. And the app I would use would be Filmic Pro. It just gives you masses more control. And it, you know, it's easy to use. You just make stuff look like professional. You know, it looks great. You know, it looks like professional footage. Shoots at a much higher rate, you know, much higher standard. You've got a lot more control over shutter speed, all of that. I encourage you, if you're going to do one thing, just get it and play with it. Just break it until you start getting some interesting looks. And what that also gives you is tons of control over sound. So you can go, you can allocate, I can use the front mic, the rear mic, a separate mic. It just gives you massive amounts of control. So that's one thing I'd absolutely recommend. If you want stuff to look super sharp and just beautiful, go for something like that. And it's not an advertorial. They don't know who I am, so. And I mean, it's kind of interesting because I think it's about 4 years ago we needed to do some videos for Bridge Street, and you know, what I didn't want to do, you know, the cost of that could mount up considerably. you know, we wanted it to be easy and quick to produce. We wanted it to look great. But, you know, again, we didn't want a big crew. It just wanted to be me and a camera guy, and really utilize the talent, you know, each of the properties to tell the story. So basically, we set a constraint. And for my video camera guy, I use for a lot of stuff, you know, and he has hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of kit, you know, amazing, you know, lenses that are 25,000 pounds or whatever. I said, right, we're going to go to all these properties and you're going to shoot on an iPhone. And that was his limitation. And it was a really great creative limitation, because it really made us think. You know, we had to think, right, we need to get good sound. We need a little bit of light on there. So he developed this little rig there. And, you know, the results were fantastic. Let's have...
Welcome to the King's Wardrobe. You're only steps away from the...
So we were shooting 2 properties a day. So we go to New York and we pop 2 properties off a day, and we were just, you know, zipping all over the place. But, you know, there's a few stills and things in here, but this is all shot on an iPhone. You know, just bang, 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 bang all day. Great sound. You know, they're all on a radio mic. You know, that's going directly into the phone and recording separately there as well. But it's sort of, you know, what was kind of a creative pain for Dan there actually worked really well. It just meant we could move really fast. We would never get bothered by people saying, what are you doing? You know, we just looked like amateurs, you know, and that was great. It meant we could move fast and do whatever we want and go wherever we want. So absolutely, you know, these are professionals using iPhones to make videos. You know, it just works really well. Right, sound, which is, I think, the big issue. I mean, the thing with the iPhone or Android is always, you know, the picture's really, really good. The sound, not so much. So we have to sort of think outside the obvious. You've got to be aware of ambient noise. You know, don't shoot something by a bus station, or if it's too loud, move somewhere else. You know, and just sort of start tuning your ears to your surroundings. You know, beware of wind, even a gentle breeze, you know, blowing on the phone, you're going to get rustle. The thing we discovered yesterday, because we know these have a mic in them, these are fantastic, we all love them, they don't work to record video on an iPhone for some bizarre reason. They do work on Filmic Pro, which is crazy, but they don't sound great. So if you don't have a lapel mic, and we'll, you know, look at that in a moment, use your old plug-in earphones. They've got a fantastic mic on them. Rig them up something like I did there, so you don't need the earphones. We don't need to be seeing you plugged in. And the sound is wonderful. It's really, really good. And it's just a real quick way of getting great sound from your iPhone. And, you know, we've got drawers of these things, you know, so, you know, use those, you know, and it works great. Yeah, I was trying it last night and I was amazed at the quality. I mean, the other thing you can do is, you know, buy a lapel mic. There's also, you know, if you go on Amazon or whatever, they're from $10 upwards, you know. So there's a few suggestions for some of the, you know, like Rhodes, the video mic, or you can go looking at, you know, the Rode Wireless Go at the moment. Great investment. You know, you're going to be using it all the time, you know, so consider those little things, because it is the massive issue with shooting on a smartphone is the sound. Because it's sort of, you know, you've got wind blowing or you can't hear the person, and it just really spoils it. Once you can hear the person, you know, you're there. Editing. I mean, there are so many free or inexpensive programs out there you can use for editing. iMovie is, you know, that's where I learned to edit. You know, I now use Premiere. I mean, I couldn't use Premiere 18 months ago. You know, I'd always have editors working on stuff, and I thought, oh, I need to be able to edit. And I've just sort of learnt it as I've gone along, and now I'm, I can edit pretty well, but there's just so many different, and they're all fairly similar about the way you edit. But, if you've got a Mac, iMovie is fantastic. There are programs like Lightworks, which are really good. Wondershare is a new one on me. Wondershare make great all sorts of programs, so that's well worth looking in. If you're getting really serious, Final Cut Pro or Premiere, is the way to go. But I think, if there's one thing, as anybody as a communicator now, and as I said, you're all communicators, learn how to edit, because it will benefit you in so many ways. If you're just making, a video of the family, or, you're doing something as a pitch for work or whatever, it's a skill you're going to be using all the time. So it's absolutely what you should be doing. And that sort of it, really. All I can say is just go and play, create, break your phone, just do all sorts of things, and just make some great content. Because it's, the limitation is your imagination now. It sounds, sort of corny, but it absolutely is. So I hope there was something in there that's of use. I'm not sure. So
thank you so much, Art. That was an amazing presentation. We want to open the floor for questions. So if you have a question, you can just drop it in the chat. And we can call on you for you to open your mic, or I can read the question on your behalf.
I just found another little, that's great. Little things like that. Directional icon there. Sorry. Okay.
Just a question here. You talked about all the great things you can do to make your visual presentations better, but what are some big no-nos that you've seen in your personal experience when it comes to filming and recording digital presentations?
Big no-nos. God, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I think it's sort of, in the way things were edited in the past, there are things if you look at editing, things you can get away with now, like jump cuts, where people you would never do that 10 years ago, because that would look like a mistake. But people's brains, you have been trained and conditioned to kind of accept them. So it's sort of, some of the things that were absolute no-nos before are completely acceptable now. So I think it's sort of, and I think very much now the rules have been broken, and it's just sort of, I think, I'm not sure about no-nos, but yes is, be authentic, don't be fake, be real. Because I think that's what people really, really want and crave for, is that sort of authenticity. And it's an overused word sometimes, but I think that's very, very important. And, don't try and, I think no-nos, is having too many things flying around and putting too many sort of all like little, lots of little special effects and glitters and bangs, and just keep it simple, and keep your palette simple, and, just sort of aim for simplicity, because it always wins. You always win through with simplicity.
Absolutely.
One good idea than 5 not so good ideas.
For sure. And we have a question from Natalia. I'm going to turn it over to her so she can ask the question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation, first of all. And then I do have a question. How do you convey or communicate energy or emotions through a screen, through a video? Because that's some feedback that I think we most all got about energy in our videos. And how do you actually convey that you have a lot of energy to give through a video?
I think it's really sort of, if we're shooting somebody or interviewing them, is to really sort of, get people into a conversation, and make it real. If I look at the, those unscripted interviews we did before, sometimes I would ask them 5 questions, and they would be all too long to use or something. And I'll go at the end, I'll go, they were fantastic. Now we're going to go for a quick fire round. And you're going to answer them in 15 seconds. And they go, oh, and I go, right, okay, here's the first one, bang. And those are the ones you use. Because they've thought about it, and now they're punching out. And they're always the ones you use. You know, if someone's sort of like, oh, they're taking like 5 minutes to answer the question, you go, that was great, but let's boil that down to 10 seconds. And invariably people can. You know, and if they know what they're talking about and they have a real, and that's when the passion starts coming across and the energy starts coming across when you do that. When things are all long and drawn out, yeah, that's when it gets a bit, I'm beginning to turn off now. But I think it's, you know, as a director, it's having that energy and having that, you know, being able to draw that out of people is really important. Making them feel comfortable and forget that you're shooting a video. You know, get them into like, we're just having a great conversation. That's when you get the great stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and also just to piggyback, what is if it's not such as in an interview, but it's more like you talking to the camera, like I'm talking to the camera right now, but what if I'm recording a video of me just talking to the camera with no interview?
I think, again, it's some of the things we touched about is, you know, getting across that, you know, well, make sure you know what you're talking about, and not reading from anything, you know, and we have ways of getting around that. You know, I use AutoCue. I've got a really simple iPad AutoCue system. So it's all on a reflection and the camera lens is looking through it because that's what they do on TV. But there's some really, you know, inexpensive ways of doing that now. And I can send you some links on that. But it's sort of, forget the technology, just learn your lines and really convey the fact that you know what you're talking about and you have a passion for the subject, and just keep that eye contact on the camera.
Perfect.
That's when it works. You know, if you're real and you're yourself, that's when it works.
Okay, and we have one more question.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap this up. Isabella, are you comfortable unmuting and asking a question? No problem. I will ask on your behalf. So how can we change the way of our thinking? As you mentioned, like an artist, but how can we improve our thinking for better ideas?
I think it's by talking to people, having conversations about it, exposing yourselves to, you know, just doing your research, you know, get online and sort of see where it takes you. You know, it's sort of, I mean, the way I look at things, I see lots of connections in things, and that fascinates me. You know, the Florence Nightingale thing, right? That's interesting. You know, and that, how does that link to where we are now? You know, and you know, things like the fact that the rocket boosters on the shuttle, the size of those was determined by the width of two horses' backsides, because that determined the size of the wheelbase of a chariot, which determined the wheelbase of wagons all over the world, which determined the wheelbase of standard gauge railways, you know, and then the size of the tunnels these rockets had to get through. All bizarre things like that. But that's what fascinates me, and it's about storytelling. You know, I think it's sort of tell a story, or, you know, if you haven't got a story, find the story.
Absolutely.
That was a bit random, so I'm not sure I answered anything.
No, thank you so much. And we're just going to wrap up here because it is a little bit over time.
Have I not got a question from Sean? No. I thought he was going to give me a difficult one, but obviously he's not. So,
so on behalf of the HC3 planning team, we want to thank Art for taking his time out of his day to be here with us today. We also want to thank HFTP for hosting this webinar series as part of the HFTP Hangout. And finally, we would like to thank all of you for joining us at our first webinar for the Hackathon webinar series. And finally, I'm going to turn it back to Victoria to wrap up this session on behalf of HFTP.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you, Art, for such a great presentation and kicking off these presentations for our hackathon. Join us tomorrow for another hackathon presentation at 9 a.m. Central Time, and we will continue this week through Wednesday. So mark your calendars and reach out if you have any questions about HFTP. And thank you to our student leaders and Eileen for leading today's session. Have a great day.
hey, bye.
Bye.
Bye.